Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Earrings Off. We want to invite you to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. You can find us on Facebook at Earrings Off Podcast and on Instagram at The Earrings Off Podcast.
Welcome to Earrings Off. I'm Lou.
And I'm Teresa. Let's get started.
Oh, good morning, Tina.
Good morning.
I'm Lou Ali, and of course we have on the call as well Teresa Vaughn, the other co-host of Earrings Off. So good morning. Well, good morning. We have with us today Tina Thomas, Senior Director of Programs and Services for the Alzheimer's Organization of Greater Richmond and Central and Western Virginia. So again, welcome, Tina. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Yeah. Well, we're going to start because we have been, I think I shared with you, I read an article about Alzheimer's, and of course, being a former social worker, I know about it, and we've heard about the impact in our communities and the impact worldwide. So I just appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and for you to share your knowledge with us in an attempt to, of course, educate listeners and to help us to address concerns with Alzheimer's as we try to take care of not only ourselves, but our loved ones. So again, we look forward to this conversation. So Tina, can you share with us some stats to sort of give us an idea about the magnitude of this illness?
Sure. Alzheimer's disease is a type of dementia. We'll talk a little bit more about what those differences are, but it is a very pervasive disease, very widespread. I don't think people really understand the significant impact that this disease has on the community as a whole. It's really what we consider and think about as a secret hidden epidemic that they're not talking very much about. But today there are almost 50 million people around the globe living with Alzheimer's disease proper, and that number is expected to double almost every 20 years. So by 2030, there'll be about over 130 million people living with this disorder. Now, in the United States, we're over 5 million, etching close to about 6 million people living with Alzheimer's disease proper. Now, there's several different types of dementia, Alzheimer's being the most common type of dementia, and that's why we talk about that one the most. But there are almost 6 million people living with Alzheimer's disease in the United States.
Wow.
Oh, I knew that many.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. What about talk a little bit about what implications there are for Alzheimer's related to like gender, onset age, race, genetic, and stress.
Sure. So one of the things that might surprise your listeners is that Alzheimer's disease does not just impact older adults. When people hear Alzheimer's or dementia, I think they think it is synonymous with being older.
Right.
But there are about 250,000 people in the United States living with what we consider younger onset Alzheimer's disease. So my staff and I, the youngest person we're supporting just turned 31. So there are folks who are diagnosed in their 30s and in their 40s, and statistics shows us that the symptoms start to develop 20 years before a person receives a diagnosis. So there are so many people in their 40s and 45s who are symptomatic. They don't know quite what's going on, but the symptoms are there. So it's not just happening to older adults. However, it does adversely impact older adults. So the majority of people who are living with Alzheimer's disease are older adults. So about 17% of folks living with this disorder are between the ages of 65 and 74. 47% of people are between the age of 75 and 84, and then 36% of the folks are over the age of 85. So it disproportionately impacts older adults. So most older adults, it's called late onset, will bump into this disease somewhere in their 70s and beyond.
Wow.
So that's one way that it's impacting people. Now, gender, women are adversely impacted by this disorder. Now, 2/3 of the people who are living with this disorder is a woman. And women are adversely impacted in other ways. So it's not just that we are higher diagnosed, we are the greatest proportion of caregivers. So
yeah,
we're
that's what I was thinking about. You said that.
So we're caring for people who have the disease. That's impacting us. And also we have a greater risk of being diagnosed with the disorder as well. So that's one of the impactors. Another impactor is that African Americans are at greater risk, almost 2 times more likely to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease than Caucasians, and Latinos are 1.5 times more likely to be diagnosed. So Black and brown people are at greater risk for developing this disorder than others are. So that's a connector as well. And then genetics. So genetics is a very small percentage. Less than 5% of the people who are impacted by this disease is happening to them because of genetics. The greatest impactor is going to be age. So age is the greatest impactor or indicator for developing Alzheimer's disease. So it's really age and not genetics, unless you have a family member, a sibling or a parent that was diagnosed with younger onset. So if you have a family member, your father was diagnosed at 45, you have about a 50% chance of being diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease if you're a carrier of what we call the familial gene. It's very rare, only 1% of the people have it, but it is very, very, very transmittable to your children if you are a carrier of that. Mm-hmm. Now, stress is very interesting because stress, depression, and dementia, they look identical in the beginning stages. You could ask a series of questions and you would be checking. Yes, yes, yes. The biggest differentiator is that depression can be treated, stress can be managed, but dementia is a progressive disease that gets worse. So when you're having the conversation with someone about Alzheimer's or dementia, and they're noticing some changes, they're not quite sure what it is, they want to really get in and talk to their provider because it's not always dementia. It could be something else. But stress plays an impact on a person, especially if they're a caregiver and they have a lot of other things going on as well. But it can look a lot like dementia, especially if you have had a significant life event, like a recent move or the loss of a significant loved one, a partner or child. That will also precipitate those symptoms.
Wow. Okay. That's some good stuff.
That is. Wow. Okay. So, Tina, are there other health conditions or factors which may make someone more susceptible to Alzheimer's?
Yes. So back to that Black and brown disparity. So there are 4 key factors that put these Black and brown folks at risk. Stress is one. Diabetes, cardiovascular disease, depression. Those things put us at greater risk. If you are diabetic and you're not managing your diabetes well, it will cause you to have vascular issues, which could cause you to have a stroke or heart attack, which is going to put you at greater risk of developing dementia. So not managing those other manageable factors will cause you to be at greater risk for developing a disease like Alzheimer's. And it's very important to help people understand that because, I have a sister and she is diabetic. And when she comes to visit my house in the summer, we always go to Busch Gardens or to the theme parks. And 2 summers ago, she said, "Oh, my feet are swelling." And I said, "Did you take your medicine today?" She said, "Child, I don't take that medicine every day. I can tell when my pressure is up, and that's when I take my medicine. But by the time you can tell that your pressure is up, is already adversely impacting your vessels. And she's a nurse. She knows that. But that's what people will say, child, I don't need it today. But you need your medication all the time so that it can regulate your body, because it's putting pressure on those vessels. And if you have a heart attack, I can't tell you how many people on the other side of the heart attack, they have more cognitive issues. They're not quite on top of their game. Or if your sugar is elevated, you'll be loopy. You're not on your game. You'll feel a little sluggish. And if that continues, it can precipitate into dementia.
Wow. Yeah, I would never connected cardiovascular disease with Alzheimer's or dementia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a direct connector, it's just like straight line. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. So you mentioned earlier on about you were going to get into the different types of dementia. So is there a difference? What's the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's? And are those terms used interchangeably? And is that right? Or should we be looking at them differently? Well, they are used sometimes interchangeably. So you will hear providers say that dementia is an umbrella term. So I want you to just think of it as, dementia is hanging up above our head, that word. And underneath that word are all these different diseases that make that happen. Dementia itself is not a disease, but a disorder. The disorder causes a person to have difficulty in their mood, language, thinking, judgment, behavior. It's a disorder. When you go into the doctor and say, this is what I'm noticing, they might say, we think it's dementia. The magic question to ask is, what kind of dementia is it? Because there are 100 different diseases that can make that happen. Alzheimer's is the #1 cause of dementia-related disorders. So what we should really say proper is Alzheimer's disease dementia. But it's not the only thing that can cause dementia. Many people have frontotemporal dementia, meaning dementia starts near the forehead and on the sides, frontotemporal. Some people have vascular dementia. That happens after they had a stroke or a heart attack. Parkinson's disease dementia. So there are a lot of different types of dementias. The reason it's so important to find out what kind of dementia you have, because it will direct the plan of action, the treatment plan. All of these different types of dementia have what we call signature trademarks. And people behave a certain way depending on the type of dementia they have. So if you are someone at home and you said, we're aging in place, I'm never leaving this home, then and your loved one has dementia, you definitely want to know what kind, because if you're 112 pounds, 5 foot, and your husband is 6 foot, 340, 240, you need to know if he has vascular dementia, Lewy bodies dementia, because he's going to have lots of falls or nightmares, or he's going to be more aggressive. You need to know that so you can make a very informed decision about how you're going to proceed forward, because you may realize that I can't manage my husband in the home, or if I'm going to, I need a lot of supports to make that happen. So asking your doctor what kind of dementia is very important, and what it's doing is you're telling them, I want to differentiate the dementias. Don't let them just lump you into dementia. No, what kind is it? Because that forces them to do additional testing, and that's what you want.
Okay, good information.
Okay, Tina, I appreciate all this information, but I'm going to be honest, now you're scaring me a little bit, because I wanted to ask you about this, because, I can go in a room and forget why I came in, forget what I'm looking for. But so is there a standard protocol that maybe you can share that maybe will not frighten listeners, that they won't think like me, like, oh my goodness, but to think, okay, this is nothing versus this is something we want to be concerned about. This, when you see this may be something you want to check with your doctor on. Can you help me with that before we go to the next one?
Great question. And we often talk to folks about those 10 warning signs. Right. What do I need to be looking for? What's most important is for folks is that, every part of our body is getting older as we age, including our brain, which means there are going to be changes happening in the brain.
I'm a witness, Tina, but go on. Yeah.
The these changes start to happen in our 40s. Right. It is a part of the normal aging process. The brain starts to shrink a little bit. We lose about 3% of the weight of the brain every 10 years. Because of that, think about it the way an orange. If you leave it out on the counter and you forgot about it, it starts to shrivel up if you leave it too long. That's sort of what happens to the brain. And because of that shriveling, the vessels are not as wide as they used to be. So the blood doesn't flow with as much force and velocity as it once did. It's still flowing, but not like it used to. And that phenomenon causes this thing to happen that happens to all of us. It's called forgetfulness. Mm-hmm. Now, there are varying degrees of forgetfulness. Mm-hmm. Forgetfulness is that thing that makes us go in the kitchen and think, oh, what did I come in here for? Or pick up my phone and, oh, who was I going to call? Right. That's forgetfulness. You knew what you want to do, you forgot, and it comes back to you later. You go back and then you remember later. That's very different from dementia. Dementia impacts how you function, how you being able to pay your bills and knowing how to prepare a meal. Not that you see somebody that you went to church with for 30 years and you go, oh, here she comes, and I can't call her. And you just say, hey, sugar, how you doing? And then later you call her name. That's forgetfulness. That happens to all of us. And there are little tips and tricks that we can do to help build that up a little bit, give our brain a little bit more what we call plasticity, make it function better. By saying it out loud. I'm sitting here in my little workspace. I could say, oh, let me get up in the kitchen and go give me a glass of water, even though there's nobody here but me. Usually we think it, but if you say it, your brain processes it differently. So say it out loud and you're more likely to retain what you're going to do along your journey. Yeah. Just by doing things like that, or reading your book or your scripture or your memory passage for the day, every other paragraph out loud, every other sentence out loud, your brain processes that information differently and you're more likely to remember it. But you're going to have some changes as you get older. That's fine. More difficulty figuring out where's my car. Now, if you don't know your car when you get to it, that's something different. Yeah. Logistical things, those things are going to happen just by virtue of aging. But if you're getting lost on your way home from church, if you're getting lost and easily disoriented, if your mood has really changed, if you're getting caught in a lot of scams, if you have a lot of unpaid bills, the house is disheveled, and this is not your normal. You're not cleaning yourself, your hygiene, and that's not your normal. Something's going on, either depression, which could be, or something else. And so these are things you want to be talking to your doctor about, and make brain health a part of your conversation. Right. I'm getting older, what do I want to happen? What do I want to do? Normalize the conversation so that if children or family members start to see changes, everybody's comfortable having this conversation. It's not taboo. We're just talking about it no differently than we do anything else. It's a normal part of the process. But Be aware that stress can also cause these symptoms. Now, we're living in the midst of a stressful time. We've got the pandemic. We've got people, the loved ones are in facilities. They can't see them. People are sequestered at home. People are losing their jobs. We've got social justice issues. And then we've got natural disasters happening all at the same time. So that's the stress of that can make us have a lot of these symptoms I'm talking about. So you have to be aware of that. Knowing friends who died and you can't go to funerals and do your normal rituals. Just all of that will cause stress that will make you more forgetful, more lethargic, not on top of your game. And some people need to go talk to their doctors about how they're feeling, because sometimes medication is the answer. Right. Wow. Yeah.
That's great. That is very helpful information. Thank you. And now I feel less afraid. I appreciate that.
Don't never be afraid. I tell folks, don't be afraid. Let's get informed. Let's figure out what it is. What do I need to do? What's normal? What's not? And then say, okay, I can handle that.
Yeah.
What about the notion of learning something new, like a foreign language? You hear people talk about doing things like that as you age to help with your brain activity and recognition and memory and those kind of things. Is that a real thing?
Absolutely. There are four
Yes.
key elements that can help that brain function better. Cognitive stimulation, diet and nutrition, social engagement, very, very important, social engagement, and then how much we stay connected within our community, those community factors and things that we do, things we eat, what we're thinking about. And you want to be doing what I call bilateral stimulation. We are either right brain strong or left brain strong. People are either artsy and crafty or they're very analytical. You want to do something that stimulates both the right and the left side of the brain. And because we're creatures of habit, we do something we like and just stick with it and do nothing new. You want to bring new things in. Now, there are a couple of activities that you can do that are better than others. One is playing ping pong or tennis or pickleball. And you can even do it on the Wii. It's exceptional for right brain, left brain activities. Another one is water aerobics, exceptional for that right brain, left brain activity. And then the third one is line dancing, because you've got to look, listen, move, feel. It stimulates all 5 of your senses at the same time. And those activities are exceptional for brain health. Now, reading aloud helps as well. It helps with that tip of the tongue. Oh, what was I going to say? That word. And reading aloud helps to stimulate that part of the brain to force language to come forward.
Would you repeat those? I got tennis, ping pong, water aerobics.
Anything like that, hitting, because that's a very logical and moving thing. Water aerobics, line dancing, exceptional. And you can even do them from your home with the Wii. But reading aloud helps with what we call verbal fluency. It happens to all of us. You go, oh God, I'm talking to someone, I know what I want to say, I can't find the word, so I pull another word. But to help pull, because that language is way back here, you want to pull that language forward. And by reading out loud, it will get that language going and cause stimulation to happen.
Wow.
You know, when I'm working with families, and your listeners, they can't see this, but I'll show it to you. I show folks this image of a brain. And next to it, it's got all these different activities that you can do that stimulate those areas of the brain. And there are things we do every day. So yes, learning sign language is exceptional. But learning it while listening to soft music in the background takes it up a notch. Learning how to play the piano, drums, bongos, tambourines, any type of music. That is the biggest bang for your buck, is learning music, because it stimulates all these different parts of your brain at the same time. Music is super, super, super powerful, even for people who have dementia, advanced dementia. I can show you people who, they can't tell you their name, they don't know what street they live on, they can't move, but if they hear a song that resonates to them from way back, oh, they'll hum. Even if they can't speak, they'll hum, they'll pat. You will get a reaction from them, because we process music differently.
Yeah.
Music is the first sound that the baby hears.
Is there, I was just going to ask if that diagram is on your website.
It's not on our website at the Alzheimer's Association, because it's a product that I use, but I'll email it to you.
Okay.
And you'll have it. Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, and Tina, you have encouraged me to not worry about how much of a fool I look doing my family functions, doing the line dances. I'm going to keep on putting myself out there, because I'm going for brain health. So I hope my family hears this episode and knows it's all about my health when I'm trying to get it.
And it doesn't matter if you're doing it good, if you're doing it right. It's the act of engaging that makes it work.
And I'm going to tell them Tina said so.
Now I'll actually give it a try.
Okay, so Tina, we're going to talk. Can you talk a little bit about the impact on families? You shared earlier about how women are victims of Alzheimer's more than men. And also typically we're the main caregivers. We're the anchors many times in our families. But so let's just talk about the impact on families and the financial, emotional impact. And we're going to add in the typical challenges faced by caregivers. So if you can talk to us a little bit about that.
being a caregiver for anyone can be challenging because there is no manual. Most people are baptized by fire. They went to bed one day as a spouse and they woke up the next day or as a caregiver because an event happened, whether it's Alzheimer's or something else that could cause this to happen. So some people are resentful caregivers. They don't really want to be there, but I have to be there. So you have all those historical emotions that come into play when you talk about caregivers. Now, when I talked about those numbers of folks living with Alzheimer's disease in the United States, you times that by 4. And that's the impact that it's on caregivers. Because when Alzheimer's impacts a family, then just happen to the person. Multiple folks are impacted. So today, there are almost 140 million caregivers providing support. So in 2019, more than 16 million family members and friends provided $18.6 billion of unpaid care for people who are living with Alzheimer's, which equates to about $244 billion. So caregiving is challenging, it's expensive, it's not covered Alzheimer's care by Medicare. So when people think, well, my dad's got great insurance, Medicare's gonna pay for it. Not for this. Medicare doesn't cover the cost for this. No, it does not at all. This is a disease that lasts for a long time. Many people are living 20, 30 years, 35 years with this disease, so it puts a significant stress on the families. Research is showing us that the caregivers are going down and the person living with Alzheimer's is going on. 2 years ago, we lost 8 caregivers, my staff and I, and the person impacted by the disease is still going on. The youngest one was a gentleman in his 50s, had a heart attack and died while he's trying to care for his mom. So it's a lot of stress that is brought to the family. And a lot of it is because of just unprepared and no plan in place, or just not enough resources and not knowing how to gather resources. It's very stressful on families. It's very expensive on families. And it takes a significant toll to watch your mother or your father or your loved one or partner right in front of you forget who you are, forget your name, curse and can curse you out. And people with Alzheimer's can cuss you out. They don't curse you out. You are cussed out. People who never cursed out before. Behaviors can happen. And oftentimes, some of those reactions are triggered by something that the caregiver is doing or not doing. So the person's losing their ability to express themselves, and they're doing everything they can to maintain their sense of dignity, and then they've got somebody bossing them around, and you're going to get a reaction. So a lot of training and coaching is needed because the adult living with Alzheimer's never loses their adult inhibitions. So if I was a person who always got dressed up and was like this every day, I'm going to still feel that way. And who are you to tell me what I can't do and what I can't wear? So you have to learn lots of different things about the person and how to support them, but also help them to be safe.
Right.
Yeah. You mentioned resources. What resources are available for caregivers?
So, we certainly have a significant amount of resources on our website, and that's alz.org. People can go to alz.org. Alzheimer's is the Alzheimer's Association, and they can click on information for caregivers, and it's just or in the search bar, just type in whatever your issue is, and that resource is available. Some people might say, I just can't think to search a website, Tina. I need help today. I'm in the fire. They can call us on the phone 24 hours a day. There is a live person there at 800-272-3900. There's always a live person there. It's confidential. We don't share it with your doctor or your insurance company. You can ask any question and they can help talk you down or point you in the right direction. Now, in your community, you can also always go to your local area agency on aging. All communities have them. Some call them senior centers or senior connectors, but those area agencies on aging, they can provide you with resources for respite money, emergency placement, counseling, guidance. That's a resource. But if all else fails, you can always pick up your phone and dial 211.
Wow.
Similar to 911, it's 211, and that is your local information hub in your community and say, I need help with I need this. And then they can guide you to what it is that you need.
Right. Wow. This is, Tina, this is great information when you talked about the impact on caregivers and how the caregiver may pass, but the person with Alzheimer's lives. Because I remember, I will never forget it. It was a sweet lady caring for her husband who had Alzheimer's, and she was trying to lift him and had a massive heart attack. And when you talked about knowing what kind and thinking about if you're going to age in place, can you maneuver this person? Because she was a small woman. And when you just talked about that, I remembered what happened with that. And that was so sad. Sad for the family. So our last question, Tina, the Alzheimer's Association recently hosted their annual International Research Conference. So are there any new diagnostic or treatments on the horizon for Alzheimer's?
Well, there were 3 things that were big takeaways for me. So today we don't have a simple way to get the diagnostic testing. You will hear families say it took almost 2 years for them to get a test. So new on the horizon is that they're taking a look at blood tests. So being able to take a blood test that can help identify one of the 2 signature hallmarks for Alzheimer's. So in order for you to have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, you have to have beta amyloid plaques or neurofibrillary tangles, plaques or tangles, or tau. And they are doing tests now to take a look at tau. So if you had a strand of spaghetti, on that strand there are lots of little humps all along the way, and they're all numbered. So they're identifying one of those humps is called tau 217, and that one's directly connected to these amyloids. And they're testing that to see, and they've had some success, what is the connector between that and people who are diagnosed with Alzheimer's? So it seems very, very promising. It's the first of its kind. And if this is provable, it will be the first time that there's clinical evidence of pre-death Alzheimer's disease at 100%. Because right now, the only way to truly say it is Alzheimer's for 100%, it still is upon autopsy. And doctors can get at about 95% of accuracy now with new advances, but they will always say probable Alzheimer's. But this will be the first time a blood test can detect this for early detection, almost 20 years before any symptoms start to show up, just based on biomarkers in the blood. So that was one of the new things that they're taking a look at. It's very promising. Of course, more testing needs to be done for that. And then also, one of the other things they were taking a look at is vaccines. Well, we're hearing a lot about vaccines right now, but they're taking a look at vaccines and the efficacy of having a flu and pneumonia vaccine. So the research has shown us that for a person who has had at least one flu vaccine, there was a 17% reduction in the risk of that person developing Alzheimer's. What? And for folks who have had multiple vaccines over time, because we're asking folks to get flu vaccines starting at 6 months now. So if you've had multiple vaccines over time, that there's an additional 13% reduction from these recent studies. So by having your flu vaccine over time, you can reduce your risk of Alzheimer's disease by almost 30%.
Wow.
And then for the pneumonia vaccine, a separate study found that people between the ages of 65 and 75, which that's that at-risk population, those who are having the pneumonia vaccine reduce their risk by almost 40%. So there's a significant benefit potentially. That's what they're studying, is taking a look at the benefits of having a flu vaccine and the pneumonia vaccine. And then lastly, one of the things that came out of our AAIC International Conference, it found that people living with dementia had a significantly higher risk of dying from an infection caused by a bacterial infection or viral infection than other people in their age range who were not living with Alzheimer's disease. So it's very important as a caregiver Know the person you're caring for, know what's going on, making sure that we have good nutrition in the body, anything that's going on that we can prevent. You want to control as much as you can control, try to prevent infections, because there's a higher risk of death for people living with dementia who are developing certain types of bacterial and viral infections.
Wow. I'm telling you, that is Tina, you came down with a lot of great information. But now, one thing I meant to ask though, so I think you touched on this earlier. I didn't know if you had anything else to share about ways to prevent or limit the impact of Alzheimer's. Did you have anything else you wanted to share on that?
So one of the things you will hear people say is, of the top 10 diseases that people die from in the United States, Alzheimer's disease has the most significant growth. So for between 2000 and 2018, the risk of developing the disorder is 146%. More people die every year from Alzheimer's than they do breast cancer and prostate cancer combined. So you want to do everything you can to control those things you can't control. And there are a couple things people should do that's very important, especially over the age of 65. One, have your annual wellness exam every year so that your provider has something to compare year over year, your annual checkup. And then number two, ask for your annual cognitive screening, because you want to know what are the changes year over year. Medicare pays for it. So you want to ask for those, because only 16% of doctors are offering the annual cognitive screening. Because doctors will say, if my patient has concerns about their memory, they'll tell me and then I'll test them. And patients are saying, if my doctor was concerned about my memory, he would tell me. So there's this dichotomy happening. So you want to make sure you ask those questions. But do everything you can to go talk to your provider. You can control what goes in your mouth. You can control intentional brain stimulation. Get up and get moving and stay socially connected. Even in a socially distant world, you can stay socially connected. Wave at neighbors, go get fresh air, get on the Zoom meeting, talk to people, stay connected. Social isolation is one of the number one reasons people lose independence.
Wow.
Can I ask you something about that cognitive screening?
Yes.
At what age did you say you should start requesting that?
Was it 65?
65? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tina, thank you so much. I can just tell, just in talking to you, not only do you have the knowledge for your job, but you care. That is coming across just in the I mean, I can hear that. You seem very passionate about this area, and certainly we sincerely appreciate that, because this is information we want to get to listeners so that we can do a better job, and even, I guess, be more gentle with ourselves when we're in the role of caregiver, to learn what we can do to try to help manage this process. So,
and being honest and as a caregiver, because we're not all built to be caregivers.
Right.
So sometimes the best thing I can do is bring care in, because maybe I'm better as an administrator. I'm better with the bills. So I'm better navigating, and that's okay too. But it's important in the African American community because the information is just not out there. So we need to get that information to where people congregate, whether it's their churches, their clubs, the barbershop, the beauty shop, the nail shop, even if it's one or two things, just like we've done with breast awareness. We got to get that message out there about brain health. And
not make this subject taboo.
That's right.
We have to hide when something is going on with ourselves or with a family member. So
it's a disease. No, and that's what I said. No, it's just a disease happening in the brain. That's all. It's like any other disease. It's a disease.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you so very, very much for giving us your time to share this information. We appreciate you and all that you do.
Thank you so much.
Tina, thank you so much. Be well, stay safe, and we will be in touch.
We know better. We do better.
Take good care.